In this video, we're going to talk about functions. Before we talk about functions, we want to talk about a relation. A relation is a correspondence between two sets. A relation can be a set of points, a graph, or a mapping. Examples of relations, writing them as a set of ordered pairs. Or, on the right-hand side is what is called a mapping. Notice with the mapping, -1 is mapping to 4, follow the arrow, and 3 is mapping to 2. The domain is the input or the first set of a relation, and the range is the output or the second set of a relation. We can write the domain and range from smallest to largest. So let's write the domain and range of A. So the domain is the first set. Well, we notice in the first set we see -2, 3, and -2. So I'm going to write this from smallest to largest with -2, 3 with braces. Now, notice -2 occurs twice, but I'm only writing it once. The range of A, well, that's 3 and -3 and 1, but I'm going to write that from smallest to largest. Now, a function is a relation in which each element of the domain maps to exactly one value in the range. So we want to know if relation A is a function. Well, let's take a look at relation A. We notice -2 maps to 3 and -2 maps to 1. Since we have a domain value that is mapping to two different range values, this is not a function. So what am I going to write? Relation A is not a function since -2 in the domain maps to 3 and 1 in the range. Now, what I have done before is below here is I've graphed the relation with those 3 ordered pairs. Now remember, it was because of -2 mapping to two different values in the range that it's not a function. Well, what type of picture can I draw in between -2, 3 and -2, 1? Well, a vertical line, which I will draw. So notice this vertical line is touching this relation more than once. What does that tell me? That this relation is not a function. This is what is called the vertical line test. The vertical line test says a relation is a function if and only if there is no vertical line that crosses the graph more than once. So what I would like to do for these two examples below is to determine the domain and the range of each relation below and then determine if they are functions or not and be able to justify our position. So let's start with a left graph. Almost looks like a check mark. Let's write the domain and the range for this. So the domain, remember that is all of the inputs, or in a coordinate plane here, all my x values. Okay? So if we go from left to right, it's okay, it's okay. Notice here this open circle here is at -3. So we're okay with -infinity to -3. Now, notice we are using parentheses, right? Because it is an interval of domain values. Well, because -3 is not included, there's a parenthesis afterward. Now, we need to determine this domain here. Well, that goes from -3, and the domain value for that other whole is 0. Neither one of those values are included. And then we need to go from here to here, which is 0 to infinity. Okay, the range then, that is the output or the y coordinates. Now, how low does it go? Well, it's at this point here, and that is 0. But again, because it is an open circle, that is going to be a parenthesis, not a bracket. So I'm going to put here parentheses 0, comma. Now, the other hole here tells me I should have a hole at 5. But if I go straight across, notice, eventually that arrow will touch the range value of 5. So that kind of closes that open circle here. And because the arrow is continuously going up, it's going to go to infinity. Now, is this a function? Well, does every single domain value go to exactly one range value? And that answer is yes, this is a function. As I scroll down a little bit, I can keep writing. Now, we could talk about the vertical line test. No matter what type of vertical line that I draw, I'll draw a couple just to show. At most, it's touching this graph exactly once. Okay? So no matter what vertical line I draw, it's only going to touch that relation at most one time. So this is a function. Okay? Some students might put it is a function because it passes the vertical line test. Just make sure that you understand what that means. Okay, let's take a look at the right picture then. Okay? That is a picture of what is called an ellipse. Let's do the domain and the range for it. Okay? Well, the domain, again, would be the input or the x values. How far to the left does it go? It looks to be like it goes to -4. Now notice that is a closed circle, so we're going to put a bracket in front of -4. How far to the right does it go? Well, we can count over 1, 2, 3, and 4 with a bracket. Now let's talk about the range. Again, the range is the outputs or the y values. So how low does this graph go? Well, it looks like -2. Again, -2 as part of the range, so I would put a bracket. How high up does it go? It goes to +2, and it goes everywhere in between. That's why I'm using brackets and parentheses for this. Now, is this a function? Well, very easily I can draw a vertical line, and notice how many times is that touching the relation? Twice. So we know by the vertical line test that this is not a function. Again, just make sure that you understand. For the line that I drew, x equal to 2 goes through 2 different domain values. That's the most important part for this. That's why the vertical line test works the way it does.